Log Talk Radio.
This thing right here is for my peoples in the streets.
Yes, today.
Log Talk Radio.
All right, welcome to another episode of One Mic here on RSG platform. It's been, we've had a lot of good things going on. If you've had a chance to either get to our Facebook page or get to our website at realsportsguys.com, you see a new interview. I had an interview with Lamar Soup, who is the director of player engagement for the Chicago Bears, and just Soup talking about his journey from Chester, PA to the current work he does with the Bears, and just, what his vision is for his work. And also, obviously doing this work in the face of COVID-19, part of his main responsibilities is he's helping the rookies transition to the NFL. But there's much more with that interview. You have a chance to check it out. Make sure you can do that. It's a great interview. And we have several other interviews on there as part of our RSG Live at the Lounge series, and we'll have more coming on that platform as well as Inside the Park, which is Hank and Hammer. Great stuff they just dropped, and a boxing moment that we've been doing with Darnell. So there's a lot of content up there. And Hustle and Flows, you can't forget my guys over there with Sekou and Marcus doing it. And we've had a couple things with the Big Show. So there's a lot out there. You can also catch us on for our audio on blog or on any podcast platform. We have our audio versions of some of our content as well. So I always want to be a reminder of that as well when I'm talking to you folks. But before I get into this, I got to bring my co-hosts in. It's always good to have them. We got at least 3 in the booth here. We usually have 4, but we'll go with my man, Mr. Hank Davis. How you doing, Hank?
I'm doing good, D. How's it going, youngin? Good to be with you all on another Sunday afternoon, to be able to chit-chat a little bit. We're trying to stretch our legs out and stretch our arms out a little bit as we try to get back to a little sense of normalcy here around the country. But, stay safe out there. You got to still stay safe out there. Things are coming back together, but not quite. And, we've got a lot of tension right now in the country, in the world. So just stay safe out there. If you're protesting, stay safe in your protest. If you go to the store, stay safe at the store. We ain't through the storm yet. We just on the other side of the eye wall. So stay safe out there.
That's always good, and that's a good message for folks out there. Thank you, Hank. And then we got my man Darnell Kirkland Jr. How you doing, young man? How's it going today?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Like, we know the NBA is having a plan to come back. Which they're starting to ease up restrictions with the stay-at-home order, but then again, we're still focused. We haven't forgot about what happened last week, the week before that, and we're going to keep moving, keep trying to get this thing going as far as a plan for the community, and we're going to stick to it. We're going to stay focused.
And that's where I like to spend our time in the open mic. It really focus on this because we want to be able to talk about a number of things in the world of sports because that's what we do. But we have all have a commitment to social justice that's in our heart. It's kind of why we've been raised. And so our open mic is, power to the people. We got to keep that. And this is what we're really feeling today. And it does feel like there's a movement this movement's a little bit different than movements we've had in recent years. The energy, the coalition of folks who are part of this movement, the communities who've been involved in this movement. And nothing was more evident than the reaction that we had, that folks had to Drew Brees' comments earlier in the week or so, when he again kind of went with that cadence about the flag and the kneeling when he was on Yahoo podcast, and the reaction he got from his teammates, reaction he got from the community, reaction he got from around the country, and what he did to kind of try to backpedal a little bit and come back with a apology and then a commitment, leading to him responding to the president, who felt like he should have kept his position. So when you heard that, I'll start with you, Hank. First of all, Brees' framework in terms of how he came out, and then his position, and then what happened after that and the responses from NFL players. What were you thinking when you were seeing this thing kind of unfold?
Well, you know what? Kudos to Drew Brees for at least being open-minded enough to listen and to understand how much he dropped the ball and kicked it out of bounds to start this thing with. You know, he started with the same narrative that just drives a lot of people of color crazy. Okay, you've taken a narrative that has nothing to do with the flag. It has nothing to do with that at all. And unfortunately, it took what was a countrywide and now a worldwide protest for you to fully understand that this had never had anything to do with the flag. And it took the brothers on his own team to say, you just don't get it, do you? And then with his apology, if you paid attention to his apology never did mention the fact that of his initial stance of, I'm never going to support a protest of the American flag. That, you know, he never really did address that in his apology. It wasn't until he wrote the letter to the president that he sounded like he fully understand, you know, how much he missed the boat on this one. That this had nothing to do, that what Colin Kaepernick was talking about had nothing to do with the flag at all. But it had everything to do with what the entire world saw with the George Floyd murder. And the only reason, and I want to state this, that the only reason why this has gotten the outcry that it has, you know, versus what happened to Trayvon Martin, versus what happened to Breonna Taylor, versus what happened to Emmett Till, was that this was actually seen and witnessed by white people. And I hate to say that, but this is the fact, that black people have been trying to say that these things happen all the time, that the Philando Castile issue, that it was the cops and what we saw on video, and then what they were able to spin that narrative. Well, you actually had white people and white eyes see this thing by themselves. They witnessed this. They witnessed this as well as with black people. Okay, not just white people, people of all nationalities saw this thing happen on the streets of Minneapolis, what happened to poor George Floyd. Okay, so they was able to see this, and that's where the outrage came. But yet and still, you still have people just like a Drew Brees who don't get it, who's tried to do the right thing in this community, but however, still missed the boat. And with him coming out and then writing the letter to the president, at least what we're starting to see is some people starting to get it. And what you need is for folks to start to actually get it, but not just get it, but do something about it. Put their name on it and say, yeah, I was wrong to think this, and to move forward with that. I'll give him credit for that. But he, like a lot of people that are non-white, he missed the boat. He flat out missed the boat to start. And now you're starting to see, because of the national outcry, the global outcry, that now they're starting to figure it out. Somebody's gotten to him. I give him credit for that, for being able to change the story. A lot of folks is not where he's at.
And what's been interesting out of that, so out of that you get the responses. Out of that you get the video of some prominent players, all black, with a message to the NFL. Then you get this statement and response from Roger Goodell. It's basically admitting, taking a 180 on their position on these issues versus the kind of nationalist platform they were running before, where, you know, owners and teaming up with Trump had a different message that ended up with, Kaepernick not ever being again a step for a job. But you got this bout face by the NFL. Darnell, I know you've been paying attention to these issues. You know, what do you make of the way in which the athletes, the football players, have used their platform to message? The video I thought was a brilliant strategy to begin putting faces with it's pretty prominent players in the league.
Right.
Roger Goodell's response in that surprised me, because this is a totally 180 to where he was before. When it started to move in that direction, what was your initial response, or how are you viewing that process?
I think it shows a sign of togetherness from the faces, the black faces of the league, to show that they are paying attention and that they do care about this cause, and they want change for police brutality. But going back to the Drew Brees thing, he said I remember him saying the exact same thing in 2016. Like this has always been who he is. I mean, it's not a surprise to me. It's not a shock to me. And his apology comes off as just reactionary. I don't know necessarily if he is sorry for what he did as much as he is sorry for the backlash he has caused and the damage he possibly has done to the locker room. Because I think, in a sense, he might have lost the locker room with his comments. But he is desperately, trying to backtrack so he could rally the troops together, so as to speak. But as far as Roger Goodell and them goes, I think it's a good. I don't want to be hypocritical because I just said the same thing about Drew Brees because he made a change, but him making that 180, I think is a good look but in the vein that the NFL is in and of itself, they have to be more political than just a player because they have to reach out to their fan base as a whole, like as a whole league. And I think they can make progress with him taking that stance.
And I think what's interesting, I think you said a couple of interesting things here, both of you. The interesting thing about Drew Brees' comments, he's like, let me make this clear. And then he goes and he starts talking about the flag. And I think part of where the confusion is, and I know Max Kellerman talked about this, and I thought he framed it brilliantly, is that folks like Drew Brees confuse nationalism with patriotism. That his framework was a national framework because for his to be true was to disregard Malcolm Jenkins' same experience with his grandparents, grandfather, whatever, have a very strong military family, as committed in not honoring that experience. Particularly when you think about World War II, when you still had segregated barracks. And so there's a nationalistic aspect to his rhetoric that he is trying to convey as being patriotic, which is interesting. But the other thing about Roger Goodell, and I just kind of, as you were saying this, Darnell, kind of hit me because this is also like Roger Goodell and I said this before, and I was talking to Marcus and going back with Marcus and Phil on this in group text, is that if you look at the work that Roger Goodell's done in his office, Roger's had a commitment. If you look at his leadership team, most of his leadership team is either a person of color in key positions, a woman, a person of color, a woman. Most times it's person of color. Like Roger, in terms of who he's hired, done it. The problem is he's not really the boss. So I'm trying to figure out where his statement fits with the owners who have been more aligned with the nationalist rhetoric. And so I think that's the next phase for the NFL. I think for Roger being bold and pushing out, because I think that's in his heart. And I think for a while he just was trying to toe the line. And I think this is the opportunity for him to just say it. And he said it. But it's going to be interesting to see what commitment the owners really have to this process, because that's where the real work is going to get done in NFL. It's with the ownership group in terms of their willingness to also be a part of this discussion. And the reason why I'm saying owners is in the NBA, you had someone like James Dolan who got the internal memo and got hot water. Hank, I know. I mean, New York Knicks fans are already struggling with him as owner. But now, in a city that was in the epicenter of some of these protests, right outside his doors, the message he sent was just more examples of people who are privileged. When you saw the whole James Dolan saga, what was going through your mind? I know you're just probably saying same old Knicks, but what were your thoughts around that?
Listen, this is what you just said. Just as simple as that. People of privilege just don't get it.
Yeah. Okay.
The thing is about James Dolan, which really looks ignorant to him. First and foremost, he's in New York City, which ended up being which was the epicenter of the pandemic. Okay. Yes. You don't hear nothing out of him. Okay. Then you've got all this situation that's going on with this racial tension. First thing he wants to do is distance himself. We ain't talking about that. We're not doing any of this. Okay. That just let you know how sheltered he is. Okay, and the sick thing about it is he should have been. You should have heard from him before now, especially with everything that was going on in New York City. And so, for the first thing for you to hear from him is these statements he made about Black Lives Matter movement. That tells you all you need to know about this cat. That tells you all you need to know about him. That he is, he's another Trumpist. Okay, he's another one of these guys that he don't see it, even though it's right in front of his nose. And that's what I saw. I wasn't surprised about it, not at all about him. But let me go back to Roger Goodell and the NFL, okay? Because what Roger Goodell saw and what the other owners saw across the nation, what they saw across the nation was they saw Americans kneeling. They saw Americans kneeling, okay, because in protest. In countries, in every state in the union, they saw Americans kneeling. They even saw cops kneeling with Americans. All right. So guess what's going to happen when the NFL season starts? You're going to have players kneeling in protest. Guess what? They're not going to be able to stop it. What are they going to do? Are they going to suspend all those players? Absolutely not. The NFL has got to be proactive that when they go back to play, that protest will be allowed on those fields without any sort of repercussions for those owners. So don't think it a minute that Roger Goodell, because his office looks right, don't think it for a second that those owners said, okay, we need to back off of this a little bit. Because they never mentioned Colin Kaepernick at all. Even though he started this thing, they never mentioned him by name. They just said, you know what? We were wrong in saying that this was the wrong thing to do. If they really are right, Colin Kaepernick should be on somebody's roster, not even what's the word I'm looking for? Just because.
Okay. An atonement.
Huh?
That's like an atonement.
As an atonement. Thank you. Just because. We're just going to put honorary. We're going to put him on somebody's roster just simply because we understand that we missed the boat here. Okay, so this is the thing about it. But you still got owners like Dolan that shows you, I don't care about what's going on. Long as it don't affect me, we're not talking about this. It should be an outrage, and something should be done about that. And the NBA should address that. They should address that, especially with the amount of black players they got in the NBA. But don't think for a second. I don't want to let Roger Goodell off the hook, because this is just because now this is national. And so if they come back with that same crap when the league opens back up, they're going to try to boycott the NFL because they're going to say the NFL has missed the boat again. So I don't want to miss out on that point.
Young, and I think one of the things that's crazy, and I know, you're, depending on what happens here, you'll be coaching, but this movement is also torn through the fabric of sports, and a number of coaches from college to high school. I mean, people are speaking up almost like the Me Too movement. That folks are highlighting things that have happened in their space in ways that they weren't empowered. You see what happened down in Texas State with a coach down there where players were talking about it. You've seen what happened in Clemson. You see with different spots where these assistant coaches or coaches are elements of just
like Norvell too
happening. And so people being put on notice, and so, you as a coach and preparing, some young folks hopefully to do this, or just, thinking about that, what you're hearing from your friends, what does this mean? Do you see college sports, high school sports taking different routes now with some of the stuff that coaches were less likely to, they always would push under the table, or they try to move on because they were uncomfortable? How do you respond as a coaching staff to some of this stuff?
Open line of communication. Like you got to talk to the kids about college. They're young adults, in the NFL they're grown men. But you got to talk to your players about just educate them about what it is to be black. And you know what I'm saying? Well, not all coaches are going to be black, but just so they can understand, what's going on. Just address it first and foremost. Just try to head it off, but also keep that open line of communication. If anybody has anything that they need to talk about. Anybody has any questions they need to have, just say, okay, you can call me. You can always email me, or you can see me before practice. You know what I'm saying? And just keep that open line of communication open. And another thing you hit on with the college coaches, I saw that with Dabo Sweeney. And another thing I saw, but I didn't bring it up, but Antonio Pittman, the old running back at Ohio State, he was on Beanie Wells' podcast, and he said when he was playing, he didn't give the name of the coach, but he said I'm going to send you back to Akron to sell drugs. He said, if you keep this up, I'm going to send you back to Akron to sell drugs. And there's subtle, kind of things like that happen in other places that haven't come to the forefront. People haven't really spoke about. But you're kind of seeing like this, the kind of atmospheric things that might happen at these institutions. Like we heard of some racial tension stuff that happens at Iowa, at Iowa's football program, and we already saw Dabo with Clemson. But it's the time, especially down south, when you're dealing with the SEC coaches. Their fan base is going to be more of those conservative guys, down south. So they're going to have to kind of toe the line between who, to put it frankly, who are they going to support? You know what I'm saying? They have their fan base, and they have their students that might make up two different demographics. So.
Yeah, I mean, you see what Fromm did and had to back away, and
right.
It's tearing the Band-Aid off a very deep wound that no one really wanted to treat. And so, I'm glad that we're hearing from people like Popovich, who've been talking about this forever. It really came out hard and really put it where it needs to be, that, white folks don't have to do some work. And I think what these coaches are going to also begin about is that players and families are going to be holding them accountable. People have gotten generational wealth off of the backs of black athletes. And to hear people like, was it Mikey Williams and folks like that, young cats who are really articulate about what they want to do, talking about, man, maybe the HBCU. I've been saying that for years. If 3 or 4 players decide to go to Howard, the TV going to find you. The league going to find you. You go to FAMU, it's going to find you. You don't necessarily have to do this in this day and age. They find you. And you can create momentum. And so you have these young cats thinking a little bit differently about where it is. But what it's doing is putting tension in the system to say that you don't have ownership of this process. And I think it's going to be very difficult for some of these folks where it's institutionalizedly ingrained to be able to do that. So we're going to keep this issue as part of what we do, power to the people, as part of this open mic. We also want to say to all the folks out there protesting on the front lines and everything else to be safe, but we got to be diligent and we got to keep the movement, and that we need people doing this in all phases, whether you're on the front line or you're in the office or you wherever you are. The battle for this is not in the marching, but the battle is also in the policy development, as we talked about on our show, Dialogue Between Brothers, in our previous podcast, which I thought was a great one, that at some point we got to come up with solutions that usually have to deal with policy and other things to move these issues. All right, we're going to get to the cipher, which is up. The NBA is back. And, they're going to have 22 teams going to travel to Orlando. And they're still trying to work out, because the teams that didn't make it were concerned that they got a big time gap in terms of time to be able to play. So they're playing around with different scenarios there. But let's just start with what they decided to do. Darnell, I'll go with you first in terms of this plan. What you know about the plan? What do you like about it? What are you concerned about it? Or you may not have any concerns about this plan of having a 22-team process moving forward.
I like it. I think I like this plan a lot better than going directly into the playoffs, because there's a lot of concerns about like possible injury risks. So bringing the extra teams gives you extra bodies to play other teams. I think they're going to have 6 to 8 warm-up games, so to speak, to get back in rhythm. And it also gives teams that might have been outside of the playoffs, it's going to give them an opportunity to make the playoffs. So we will get a chance to see if Damian Lillard, Zion Williamson, stars like that, Devin Booker can right the ship with their team and possibly make a run at the playoffs. So I think I think that's a really good idea. I like the way it's shaking out with that, and I'm going to hand that off.
Yeah, I think that, I think, they're put in a very difficult position because you're trying to figure out at what point it's a term that you use in economics, diminishing returns. There's a point of diminishing returns where you start to lose value. And, there has been a lot of talk that, if they were able to get 70 games in for everybody, it helps them to trigger on some of the local TV deals and regional deals. And I thought, for the good of the money moving forward for some of these players, that might not be a bad thing to do at all. But given all things, I didn't have much of a problem. Hank, when you heard this, 22 teams, what were some of your thoughts?
Well, the thing that I first thought about was the teams that didn't play.
Yeah.
And what happens with those players. What happens during the free agency? I look more at the business aspect. Okay, now I'm with a team that's not going to even be able to compete. Now, we might be out of it, and we understand the circumstances that we're in. But now, if I'm an agent, I'm coming up on free agency, or if I'm at the end of my rookie deal with one of these teams, I'm going to look to both. I'm going to look to say, okay, in this circumstance, I can look at this two ways. One, maybe I'm being safe. But I love to play basketball. Okay, this is my passion. This is my career. And I'm not playing because my team absolutely blows. So I don't even get a chance to show off what I'm doing. So I'm going to try to go to one of these 22 teams. And then what does that weaken the league going forward? Does that really weaken the league going forward? Because now you got players that don't want to stay. These teams have been just absolutely identified, and the NBA has no way of justifying that. They cannot say, well, no, these are not the weakest teams in our league, and we do want to have parity there. Well, no. So you're going to have to do something as a league to protect the integrity of your league, to try to maintain some level of parity so that these other teams and these fan bases, continue to watch your product. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem there. I understand why they have to do it, but there's always going to be a fallout when you do stuff like that. When you start to eliminate a portion of your league, to try to keep things going. Now, the playoffs will probably be the most competitive thing we've ever seen. And from a fan perspective, great. But from a business perspective, from those players who are not going to be playing, those players who are going to be demanding trades because they're on these other teams and not playing, we're going to have to see how that fallout is going to be massive. And you're going to have this group of teams. It's almost going to be like college football, where you're going to have your Power 5 league and you have your group of 5 and nobody wants to be there. And then you're going to start having this bailing thing. And that concerns me with the NBA going forward. They're going to have to do something to really try to build that back up going into next season.
Yeah, and I think part of what they're framing, like, look, we got to do what best we can do with what we got right now. And obviously there are teams that are not playing. And some of the things they're looking at is, creating space where they can, do some mini camps, where they can do some training, where they can work out, still have those teams have extended opportunities to work out and work with the young players, maybe have some type of summer league type framework. How do y'all feel about some of those suggestions? Either one of you.
Let me start, because I know Darnell probably got a whole different perspective. I think that's what you have to do. You have to do something to keep these teams engaged. You might have to, do you give them an extra draft pick? Do you do something so that these teams just don't flat out, falter? You got to do something, extra work, somewhere where they're compensated for not. And we can always say, well, you play a full season, you didn't make the playoffs, then what's the difference? The difference is you don't have a chance. Your season has been eliminated while regular season ball is still being played. You see, this is where it becomes kind of sketchy. If you were just going right into the playoffs, that's a different animal. But now that you're going to have teams have an absolute chance for play-in, and some teams who don't because they don't even get a chance to play, you got to compensate those teams. Otherwise, you're going to weaken the league. And I understand the circumstance, but it will weaken the league if we don't do something like that.
Yeah, Darnell, you have a response to that?
Yeah, well, that was kind of where I was going as far as I think they should have a summer league style thing in a different site. Maybe they go to Vegas or something like that.
Yeah, Vegas. Yep.
Where they have their own summer league, and the winner that either can get the first draft pick for next year, or they get more ping pong balls come time for the NBA lottery. So I think it should work kind of like that.
I love that one. Yeah, more ping pong balls for the NBA lottery. Yeah, you get a bonus with that. You know, and maybe that gets some of these veteran players on the court workouts.
And if I could, let me just piggyback off of what Darnell said. I think that also that no teams that's playing should have the first 5 picks. Period. That the first 5, maybe the first 6 picks have to come from these teams that didn't get a chance to play. I think that you got to stipulate somewhere that if you're going to do the lottery, that those teams, that the rich don't get richer, that somehow that these teams that aren't playing, they've got to be guaranteed, you know, a top 5, top 6 pick outside of the teams that are playing. You follow me?
Yeah, but I think the problem you got that is some of those picks are built on deals that were done 2-3 years ago that you have to honor. So that have a lot to do with where people place in terms of those being for them having opportunity to get the picks. And so I think you have to honor some of these past deals because players got exchanged or deals got done. However, I think I like the additional ball, at least in there, because it gives some incentive to whatever the summer league or schedule constellation tournament you have with them. It gives them a little bit more incentive in the summer, so you can create a competitive atmosphere, which I think a lot of these teams want because they want their young players to get some advantage, right? They want their young players to get an opportunity. So I like that idea, but I think you'd have to, because of the collective bargaining agreement and all the rules and policies, honor any previous trades that might end up allowing, you know, someone like the Lakers, if they had to deal with somebody to get a compensatory pick if they finish, you know, in the top 5, you got to honor that deal because. Well,
don't you have a COVID-19 stipulation? I mean, you got a 22-team league, so you're not even talking about normal times here. So I'm looking at it as you got to have these sort of stipulations go across the board for this year. Otherwise, give me a chance to play out the season. If we're not, then you got to have that same stipulation for those teams who don't play. And I understand those and in normal times, those deals would be honored, but these are not normal times.
And my response probably to that would be that the equity part is we need to have an opportunity to continue to develop our players. That's separate from how we do our draft business, in my mind, is that they're like, it wouldn't be fair to say these 22 teams are playing and then you telling me you're going to limit how often I can get my players together to do development, or I can't. Cleveland and Detroit, who've been talking, can't create almost like football, you know, like football does in their camps, where they create these opportunities for scrimmage, inter squads, and working out together, kinds of opportunities where we can get better, but we got to be out luck. To me, that's the inequity of it, is the opportunity to continue to develop your players and teams to get better for the next year. That would be the one. I would separate that from the draft situation, which I think is something that's static and different that can stay. It's same. You know, it might depend on when you have the draft, because that's the interesting thing. What I would say, is I would set it up that, I don't think you can do that, but you might be able to do that. You could. That the summer league at this point would only include those teams that were not. So if I drafted somebody, normally they would come and be able to play with that. Maybe the advantage is they get to have their rookies play as part of this, and the other teams that are playing are active. Rookies got to wait until training camp. Like, there could be some stuff like that gives a little bit more equity around that. So if the NBA had to draft, you know, say June 4th or July 4th or July 7th, then you could play in the summer league in Vegas with that team as part of that scrimmage, whatever you have it. But because the Lakers are playing, those players got to wait until this other period, right? And so you at least get a lead run with your rookies and getting them on the floor and getting the advantage, that might be something you could flow. And the teams who are playing right now can't really complain because they're getting the advantage of being able to play for a title or being able to play in these competitive spaces. But I see where you're going with it. NBA's got a mess, but I think they work as best they can to kind of figure it out. I was going to ask a question about the teams that were selected, but it's interesting as you were talking, Hank. What about the teams who are sitting out? Who do you think going to use this time the best? Because I think some of these teams, if they do it right, could actually advance themselves. My vote is I think Golden State is going to take a leap. I mean, Steve Kerr was already treating the season as an extended training camp. If you watch them, like he was developing he was evaluating talent. I mean, I've never seen anybody do it as well as Steve was doing it this season. He was, and then finding ways to integrate some of the veterans. He's going to have Curry back in, but really focusing on developing these young people. I think Steve is going. I think Golden State's going to kill it in the summer. But who else do you think is going to take advantage of this time? Who's not necessarily playing in the 22? Darnell, you think you got somebody?
I was going to say Golden State, but to be honest, if I was going to say another team, I'll go with Atlanta because Atlanta they have a very good young core of talent, and some of which, like, I don't think Clint Capella has played much with them. So getting that extra chemistry, getting those guys in the lab with them working together, it could benefit them from getting extra time together. But as far as the draft process, if they could win this so-called tournament that I proposed, and they can get a higher pick, they could get the hometown kid, Anthony Edwards, and we can see how that goes. But
yeah. So I know we probably took both of yours, Hank. But
you took both of mine, you know, and I will not say the Detroit Pistons. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not doing that. Okay, I don't know what they're going to do, but whatever it is going to be wrong. But I want to go back to Golden State because you're talking about the rich getting richer.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a team that, you know, coming off a year where they lost the championship, they had all these injuries. Okay, you still got a championship pedigree over there. And now they got an opportunity to develop young players, as you stated. And, oh, by the way, they could get the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talking about this is a team right now. You're just talking about it couldn't have happened any better for them. You didn't really want Steph Curry and those guys. You know, they weren't going to play. They weren't going to play any minutes of significance anyway, right? So they get a chance to really just take the rest of the season off and develop that team back into championship pedigree with a couple of good moves in the offseason. That one is the one where it almost seems like it benefits them all across the board, you know, because Clay wasn't coming back. Steph wasn't coming back. You were just – and all you was doing was putting minutes on people like Draymond, okay, that don't need it. They can rest out now and be ready to take another run, another shot next year or move on. But for them, of all the teams that there's benefits, it benefits them the most. You can't think about anybody else. But that's the only team that went deep into the playoffs last year that now can benefit from this. If you can benefit from this, the Golden State Warriors will.
What's interesting about that is that it almost feels like that transition year that San Antonio had that allowed them to get Duncan, you know, and then just kind of keep it moving a little bit. They just did not lose a beat. They just were able to really position themselves and then set themselves up for another 10, 15 years. And you're right. I think the Warriors are really using this well. It's extended. And I think what's crazy about this is that the transition between the end of this season and the beginning of next season is going to create a disadvantage for the team that doesn't win the championship because you're going to give a lot of energy to this, and then you're going to have a short turnaround. Whereas these teams sitting out, a team like Golden State that could really orchestrate, work this the right way, could be coming into the next season with a lot of momentum,
right,
and really push this. Where you have these teams who have battled, and whoever did win expended a lot of energy, you know. And so, you know, whether it's the Clippers, whether it's, you know, the Lakers or someone else, they had to expend a lot of energy. They had to deal with a lot of turmoil to get to a championship, but then to be able to pivot and turn around and get ready for another season somebody can allow themselves, like Golden State, to get momentum to catapult right up in there.
And let me add this too, is the fact that you're not playing like right now. Those players would be. You can argue that their legs are fresher. You can argue that not having all those minutes is going to help for maybe a better quality of basketball. But also now you're talking about trying to do some sort of training camp when you would have been playing. Okay, we're into June right now. So these they got to get themselves back into basketball shape when they would probably be doing this in September, October, getting into November. So that's a change. And if athletes know they're used to routine. So this is a break from their routine. What you want to watch too is what these injuries. This is where the early part of the year when you start seeing the hammies and that kind of trying to get in basketball shape. These guys won't start getting the basketball. They might start playing into the playoffs. So those are things we're going to have to watch. And you talk about the quick turnaround. The teams that got to play, watch them very carefully. Watch the quality of basketball coming back, number one. Watch injuries, number two. It's going to be real interesting to see.
Now, and with the teams who are selected, who do you think is in the best position to really take advantage of this new model? Is it still the Lakers and the Clippers, or do you see a dark horse, someone like Denver, someone like Boston? A team like Portland who might get some healthy bodies back over the course of this time and catapult them. If they would have them healthy bodies, Portland would have been struggling for the playoffs. They probably would have been a top 4 team with the healthy bodies that they had to deal with the injuries. Who do y'all see? I'll start with you, Darnell. Who do you see, benefiting from, this new format?
Well, I think the rust is gonna really hurt the coach heavy teams, like the teams that really come through with a system, like the Jazz, maybe, teams like Indiana, teams like the teams they run systems a lot, like Toronto. But I think the teams that are going to excel are those like AAU teams. You know what I'm saying? Like you got James Harden and Russell Westbrook. I think they're going to play. They're going to excel in this. I think Boston's going to excel with Kemba and Jason Tatum. They're guys that can really if things fall apart, they can say, okay, just give me the ball and I'm an ISO. And I think teams like that, and can't leave out the Clippers, because the Clippers they have 2 of the best ISO scorers in the league with Kawhi and Paul George, and on top of that, they have defenders that the chemistry doesn't necessarily matter as much because they all can just lock down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I like your point in terms of those system teams versus, as you framed it, the AAU teams, and the fact that you're not traveling on a plane and having to get in and out. That you're even if you had a back-to-back or a day and you're going to say you're just going back to your room. It's for a lot of these folks, it is like AAU, where you played all these weekends, all these games over a weekend, and you're basically staying in a room or on a campus balling, but you don't have to get on a plane. You got to pack and unpack, and you not have to go home and take care of stuff. But everything is, and I think that also helps some teams that might be a little older. I think the Lakers benefited in that because they're not going to be worn on the legs. You're not worried about getting on planes and getting all this stuff. You can get everything set up. You can get the massage. You get everything set up. You go back and get your routine because, you're basically just going down the street to go play every other day. So I think the design is going to be interesting. I see Hank over there setting his head a little bit. What you talk about, man?
Man, because why am I even on the show? Y'all going to take everything I'm going to say. I might just sit back and listen. I mean, Darnell, you said what team do you think will benefit? He named 8. Okay, then that only leaves me with 2, and then you say them. So I'm like, just what else can I say?
Let's highlight the ones you thought.
Well, listen, the Lakers was the one that popped into my mind just for what you said. You got Anthony Davis who can't stay on the floor for a full season. You got an aging LeBron James. So now you got guys that have been able to rest up. Everything you just mentioned, Devon, they don't have to travel. Okay, they go back to the hotel. Their legs are fresh. They don't have all these minutes. They ain't got all these nagging injuries. Okay, they can just go ahead and ball out. Especially like Anthony Davis, who just for some reason cannot stay on the floor. for the last couple of seasons. This benefits him greatly. And LeBron, too. This benefits him greatly. They can make one push. Now, you talk about these other teams, obviously, that's got that 1-2 punch. We haven't mentioned Milwaukee. A player like Giannis, who's had a chance to not fresh legs and now can get back up and down the floor. Teams like Boston, those teams like that, it benefits them. They've got the talent. The talented teams, like I said, that's not system that can just go ahead and ball out and ain't got to worry about all that. Just go out there and ball out and let the talent take over. Those are the teams you're going to watch. It's going to be a bloodbath between LA and LA. This is what we wanted to see. But see, the factors of injury and all that stuff, these guys have had time to heal up. And they're just going to be able to ball out. And early on, that's what you're going to see. Now, what I will say is the longer this goes, watch the system teams start to figure it out. Okay, before the season runs out, the system teams are going to start to figure it out. And we're going to see that dynamic change a little bit. So like the Denvers of the world, the Utahs of the world, those teams could start making some noise. The Portlands could start making some noise, once we start getting close to the playoff time, because now they'll be got acclimated a little bit, but they're not going to look good early. So that's what we need to watch out for.
And I left you Milwaukee. I thought I left Milwaukee. So hopefully
I said Milwaukee. Thank God.
That's why I wanted to leave you there, because you said we took everything. I purposely did not talk about Milwaukee. And the final point I would say that y'all point out, we're dealing with a pandemic. And so I'm also saying teams that have depth. Because if someone ends up being affected who can adjust most by that? And that's when you get a team that's like, the Clippers got a deep team. You start thinking about who can step up. That's where teams like Boston become important, because they're used to having different people step up as well. You think about those teams in terms of where they have some depth, that if they were to lose somebody, they could still be competitive over a period of time until that person came back, particularly one of their starters. Has to also be factored into this equation as well. So this is going to be interesting, y'all. We're going to keep checking this stuff out. We're going to keep paying attention to it. We do know the NBA is back. I know they're still tweaking some things. It's been approved by the Player Association, but I know they're still, I haven't looked at the ticker, trying to deal with the teams that don't make it, but I think you're going to come up with a system for them as well. I think it'll be interesting as well. So we'll be waiting for baseball to make their announcement here at some point. Some of these other folks who are, trying to figure it all out, we'll get to that on our next podcast for sure, about baseball and some of these other sports. But we know we got to close this thing down with the only way we know how to do is by having my man Hank drop the mic.
All right, thank you, guys. Listen, another week has passed. Another week has passed. We've got protests all over the world. We still have a pandemic out there. We have states opening up. Here in the state of Michigan, restaurants and bars are going to be able to open up as business as usual with not as many customers. Salons and barbershops will be able to open up in a couple of weeks. So it's going to be a sense of normalcy. But I want to just remind everybody out there that nothing is normal. We don't have normalcy right now. Okay, we have a lot of tension going on out there, and folks are protesting all over the world. We still have a pandemic. Folks are still out of work. I'm not saying anything to discourage anyone, but I do want you all to still be safe. Still use your right mind. Still use common sense. It's going to be good to see somebody that you ain't seen in 3 or 4 months. Still give them the old fist bump. Still use your mask when you have to. Okay, when you're out here protesting, have common sense, have common decency. Try to understand what's going on out there. As I said last week, ask yourself why. Okay, and then look to find an answer. And open up your mind, open up your head, so that we can find an answer that we can all work together and be together, so that on one day we can be at the stadium and we can still cheer. And the colors that we are against are colors on the jersey and not the colors of the skin. So I just want to say out there, be safe, be smart. And I would be remiss if I didn't leave while saying, rest in peace, Big West Unseld, Washington Bullets. Peace out.
Thing right here is for my peoples in the streets.
Yes. Today,
Blog Talk Radio.
show this One Mic. Phoenix is another place. They got a great training staff.